So, 1, 2, 3, let's kick off. Hello, everybody. Could we put the slides up on the screen? Just wanted to welcome everyone to the session. My name is Will Redfield. I am with Worldwide Public Sector Marketing of Amazon Web Services for cybersecurity and compliance, also known as security assurance. I'm happy to be here with you. Thank you for attending our conference and being here in Washington, D.C. We do appreciate it. Without further ado, I'd like to kick off this session. This is McAfee Scaling Security with Amazon, a very important customer of ours, as well as a partner, as a part of the Amazon Partner Network and Security Marketplace. I'm going to hand it over to Nathan McGirt with Amazon Web Services, a Senior Solutions Architect, and also with Ned Miller, who represents the McAfee company. Thank you very much, and enjoy the show.
Thanks. So I'm Nathan McGirt. I'll introduce myself second, and I'll let Ned introduce himself first.
Sure, thanks, Nathan. So my name is Ned Miller. I'm the Chief Technology Strategist for our U.S. Public Sector business. Today I'll be representing both McAfee Corporate and sharing some anecdotes with respect to McAfee as a customer of AWS, and then also talking a little bit about some of our customer experiences and capabilities that we have that support the AWS environment in different regions.
Thanks. So, and I'm Nathan McGirt. I'm with AWS. I lead a team of solution architects that work with public sector partners. So with that, I guess we'll go ahead and get started.
Sure.
So I understand that McAfee went through a pretty significant transformation recently in early April. Can you tell the audience a little bit about that?
Sure. For those of you who have not been closely watching, April 3rd, we divested from Intel Corporation. It's kind of ironic. We started off as McAfee, got acquired by Intel, became Intel Security, and now we've divested ourselves. We're back to McAfee again. And doing so, we became a approximately 7,600 person startup company overnight, which was kind of interesting. And for those of you who are not familiar with kind of our corporate statistics, just some interesting factoids. We're represented in about 190 countries. As I said, we've got about 7,600 employees or so. At last count, I think we've published that we cover, in terms of number of customers under management with our endpoint technologies, 358 million or so customers globally. So pretty significant enterprise spinning out. So I tease often that I think we're probably one of the largest startup companies on record here in recent times, but it's been interesting so far.
Okay. So I understand that in addition to your security products that you offer to customers of AWS, you're now using AWS for your own workloads and your internal IT needs. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So as I mentioned, being such a large enterprise and privately held, we had to stand up a significant amount of infrastructure in a very short period of time to support 7,600 people, as you might imagine. So as a result of that, I can't get into the specifics, but with respect to our growth rates, year over year, in terms of our adoption of AWS infrastructure, we've grown well over 300%. I had an opportunity to speak to our CIO and our CISO before the event, and it was fascinating to me how much we were able to leverage the infrastructure, the AWS infrastructure, and I have some internal quotes that suggest that we more than likely wouldn't have been able to pull off the divestiture and going private unless we had cloud infrastructure as an option.
That's a powerful story.
Yes.
So I have to ask, do you use your own products to secure your internal
I asked that question myself because I'm responsible for telling all of our customers what to do. So our CISO is brand new. He came from industry, so I think I caught him. He was about 3 weeks on the job, and I challenged him with that question. I'm like, so do we actually use our own tools? And the answer is yes, right? From his lens on the business, and he's getting more and more involved, he had suggested we could always be doing more. As all of our customers have found their journey into the cloud, everybody has a different set of experiences. Some have a lot of scar tissue, some are still bleeding. But for the most part, We are using our own tools as well as a lot of other third-party tools. So our corporate messaging really talks about cybersecurity as an ecosystem. Our new branding is Together is Power, and it was interesting coming from what I consider a fairly new employee, our CISO, that he strongly encouraged that, and he believes that truly. So it's something that we've taken to heart going forward.
So I know your products have been used in public sector for over 20 years. I've implemented some myself in previous lives, and I imagine a couple of folks in the audience are probably using them today. Can you talk a little bit about where your products are today in terms of support for the AWS environment?
Sure. So as those that are long-term McAfee customers, you're probably familiar with some of the acronyms I'm going to throw out here, naming conventions for some of the products. When we first started working within specifically the Amazon environment, what was important for us was to get our first-line management tools to the point where if a customer chose to stand up a workload, whatever that workload may be, whether it was server capacity, storage, et cetera, servers, we would be able to give them manageability and visibility into those environments, just as if they had the same controls in place in their own data centers. So our ePolicy Orchestrator technology, which many of you may be familiar with, was the first entrant into working with the cloud, and we have what we consider cloud connectors today that allow us to do both management and provide visibility across both universes, cloud-based and their on-prem data centers. So really kind of a hybrid approach is how we started. From there, we continued to evaluate our portfolio in the AWS environments, and for the most part where it makes sense, our entire portfolio that we offer in a perpetual model runs inside of an AWS region or environment today. So think of it as the BYOL model, bring your own license. You can use your own license in many of the AWS regions that exist. From there, we've taken it one step further with tighter integration into the AMIs. Just here at the end of May, we announced our private cloud server suite, or public cloud server suite, which is tightly integrated with AMI and is available via the marketplace. So we're taking steps to further the portfolio as we move more into offering capabilities through a SaaS-based offering. So over the horizon, you'll see announcements coming from us with a number of security SaaS-based offerings to the marketplace, all of which will be delivered, the majority of which through AWS.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
Shifting gears a little bit, I'm curious to hear when we look out at the landscape, what threats and risks have your attention today? And two-part question, I'm going to throw the second part at you now. As we look off over the horizon into the future, how do you think that landscape might change?
So oftentimes we do threat briefings like a lot of cybersecurity companies. We have cyber threat reports that we put out quarterly, so there's a long list I could share of the actual threats that are out there. Ransomware comes to mind, obviously. Earlier this year, we produced a threat report, a 2017 prediction, which is available on our website, and we said that ransomware would begin to tail off. I think that might have been a little premature given the current state, but ransomware is always top of mind, and the most recent one with WannaCry, WannaCrypt, continues to evolve, and we think that this may have been a series of tests, quite honestly, the last series of ransomware. If you look at how it has compromised a number of entities around the globe, the overall expense associated with paying the ransomware, the overall numbers have not been all that significant in terms of what people have been able to actually pay, but the cleanup value is yet to be determined. That'll be the most expensive part. But in talking with a number of executives, both C-level executives at customers as well as operators and practitioners, the concern now is this just the tip of the iceberg? Have we just been tested over the course of the last 6 to 9 months with things like WannaCry and the Vault 7 release, et cetera? And the compelling answer back is yes. The industry as a whole is starting to believe that we are just being tested. More sophisticated threats will start to propagate themselves over the course of the balance of this year. some of which will leverage some of the techniques and tactics of WannaCry that we've seen already. In terms of over the horizon, I will say that people scare me the most, right? So our most vulnerable type of things that we need to be concerned with is not necessarily the technology. A lot of it's the people and process. I should say process, not people. But it still comes down to a lot of the fundamentals, Nathan, where patching still is a critical element that's not being done, and we see the pain of not doing that and finding ways to do it. There are some sophisticated things that we've talked about on my team with respect to what could be next. Things like ransomware in the cloud, right, as a potential. That was a dialogue narrative that started late last year and picked up again early this year. One of my colleagues brought up the concept of cloud hopping ransomware, which could be interesting in terms of a problem set for us to mitigate. But ultimately, my answer to your question would be visibility and manageability. So back to the basic controls and ensuring that customers really adopt and understand what the shared security responsibility model is as it relates to investing in AWS infrastructure.
Thanks for that. Kind of a follow-up, but more through the customer lens. What would you tell customers to be kind of on the lookout for over the next 12 to 24 months?
Yeah. So the common theme in terms of conversations that I have with customers is shadow IT is a problem. And we kind of joke about it a little bit in terms of how easy it is to stand up an AWS environment. You've made it so easy that anybody can do it. And as a result, we do have some runaway situations with respect to this concept around shadow IT. So where that manifests itself and starts to cause challenges for the security folks are when it comes time for audits and compliance, or if it's within the DoD arena, they have command readiness inspections and they fail their audits, et cetera, because they're not aware of what IT assets are actually out there because they have these miscellaneous systems that have been stood up for one reason or another. Along with that is how quickly the benefits of the cloud that are provided with infrastructure, the elasticity concept, the ability to scale up and scale down, or even scale something up very quickly and then have it torn down as though it never existed, and not have an opportunity to put any controls in place to actually monitor that asset while it is online, right? And what potential damage could it have done? So those are some of the primary concerns. The foundation really comes back to basics, which are really the visibility and manageability of those assets and being sure that you can discover workloads and you have the ability to control as best you possibly can what your organization does as it's trying to deliver on whatever mission it may be supporting.
So, you talked a little bit about compliance. Something that I get asked about a lot from my perspective in my role is FedRAMP. I have a lot of conversations with customers that are trying to get their hands around it. They're trying to get their hands around what their responsibilities are on their half of the shared responsibility model. And we were preparing for this session. We discussed that a little bit, and you had some comments to share from your perspective to where you felt that a lot of customers really didn't understand it well enough. Do you mind elaborating?
Sure. So again, in my role, I have an opportunity to get a lot of face time with customers at all levels, from the C-level executives to, as I mentioned, the operators and cyber defenders. And it depends on who you ask the question, right? So many of them, though, from a consensus standpoint, if I had to do a survey across the customers I've talked to, which would probably be a couple hundred in the last 18 months, there is a feeling that if they acquire infrastructure from AWS and it's already FedRAMPed, they're good to go, right? They can check the box and they believe that they're safe at that point. We spend, my team as well as our engineering teams, we spend the majority of our time explaining to customers what that shared security model actually is. And across the board, if you audit all of the customers and survey your constituents in terms of users of the cloud, there's a pretty mixed response in terms of where the responsibility ends and who's ultimately going to be accountable. As you and I talked in the hallway, I have yet to see GAO and the IGs go in and do thorough inspections of an organization that stood up hundreds, if not thousands, of instances and actually audited, and an agency get dinged because they didn't have the proper controls in place on a number of assets that they may have deployed. I think that's coming in the near future.
So, kind of in a related vein, we offer a variety of different regions, some of them for customers that need to run workloads in a particular geography or concerned about data sovereignty. But some of them are also designed to meet special security and compliance requirements. Like, for example, in the US, we've got a number of regions with FedRAMP moderate, but we also have the GovCrowd region that has a FedRAMP high, PATO, as well as can help meet ITAR requirements and some other requirements. Can you talk a little bit about how your products work in those different sets of regions?
Sure. So when I describe the different AWS regions and our technologies to customers, I try to distill it down to something simple in terms of just guidance. If you create workload, whatever security model you had for your on-prem data center, that security model should follow your cloud workload, wherever that may be. So the short answer is our portfolio aligns to whatever the security target of interest is for the customer. So if they're going for a FISMA high or a FISMA moderate, if AWS East or AWS West and FedRAMP is in line, or GovCloud, or if an intelligence community is interested in a specific region, we have the opportunity to work with them, and our products have been deployed in pretty much all of the regions. What's interesting about customers and demand is oftentimes when mission is important, they won't wait for us to test something to validate that it actually in fact works. So we have had instances where customers have taken their own initiative and they've just stood up capability inside of AWS Regions, and it just works, right? Which is the great news. So in some cases we had to catch up a little bit, but the good news is the portfolio aligns well with whatever our customers' interests are.
So a little bit of a follow-on talking about your portfolio. As we look out into the future, what's next in your portfolio?
So given I've got some peers in the audience, I can only lean forward so far with roadmap discussions and obviously the legal disclosure claims. But some interesting things are really on the horizon here. I'll start with CASB as a category. CASB has been around now for probably 3 or 4 years. So the concept of CASB, I think you'll see a second and third generation of that definition. So if you follow the Gartner definition today, you'll see some leapfrogging happening in the industry, and we think that we're going to redefine that particular category. You may even hear the term come from us, pervasive data protection. So it will be a combination of technologies that take the best of what CASB promises and also provides a data protection concept around that as well. So you can read into that DLP for cloud, et cetera. So we're pretty excited about the potential there. And then leaning forwards, our SaaS offerings are in huge demand across the board. Customers are continue to be cost constrained and are looking for optimizing infrastructure costs as much as they possibly can. The ability to deal with the volume of threats is overwhelming for a lot of the shops that are 5 to 10 person shops and even greater. So they're looking for as much automation as possible. We've made significant strides in what we consider the orchestration arena and automation arena as it relates to detecting threats, mitigating threats, and doing that full threat defense lifecycle is what we call it. So from identifying the threat until you actually remediate the threat. So being able to offer those things as a service is where the market is really demanding us to be able to deliver. We've got a number of examples here recently where we've actually worked with customers to outsource their entire IT security operations for what we do really well. So that's the trend line that we're seeing, and I think you'll see a number of announcements from us over the course of the summer. And this fall, it's going to be pretty exciting. I think our lineup is going to be pretty outstanding, so stay tuned.
Awesome. Sounds great.
Yeah.
I think my last question for you before we open it up is what piece of sage advice would you give customers on what they need to be doing out into the future?
Disconnect from the internet.
Okay.
No.
The only way to be sure.
That's the only way to be sure. So clearly, as customers are, and I'm speaking to public sector customers as a whole for the most part, as budgets become suspect in terms of what we call the color of money, capital expenses versus O&M kind of money, et cetera, and this kind of plays well, obviously, with AWS. Using O&M money to support cybersecurity operations, I think will be the kind of the key trend. So as customers looked at these shared services models, and we've experimented as an industry with shared services multiple times now. There's probably 3 or 4 iterations of that, and for lots of different political reasons, it didn't work. I don't think it's a technology problem necessarily, but I think the political motivations, the budget motivations are in place now where this shared service outsourcing model, specifically for cyber, is an area that will grow very quickly over the course of the next 2 to 3 years. So the advice that I have for customers is, as you're looking at the task of the day, and from the lens of a cyber defender, there's on any given day, I think we're now declaring, I think we're finding 5 new classes of malware threats every 6 seconds, some ridiculous number. It's a huge number every year. So if you look at that volume, it's going to continue to exponentially grow as we bring more devices online, as IoT becomes much more than just a talking point on slides. And we see all of the volume that we have to deal with. I think it's going to be important for the operations teams to evaluate what's the most critical thing that they can do based on the skill set they have, and then consider getting away from some of the mundane things like operationalizing security and making sure they have the latest versions of operating systems and those types of things, and uplift their skill set to the point where they're really analyzing the data and becoming more proactive in their overall defensive posture. When we talk about our security solutions, our objective is to help customers become much more efficient and improve their efficacy overall. So going forward, as you look at your operations, look at where it might make sense to outsource. The cost of doing so is going to be pretty attractive going forward because we can deliver services through the cloud and make it much more compelling.
Thanks.
So, sure. Thank you.
I think we've got time to take some questions from the audience.
Sure.
Does anybody have anything they want to share? Thank you.
I'd like to know what version of EPO are you using as a SaaS in the AWS cloud?
What version of EPO? I believe it's 5.3.1. Is that right? I have some security architects in the room that I'm searching for help. This is like I need help from a field of question. I believe it's 5.3.1. We can get back to you on the specific version.
The reason why I'm asking is you also have a current version of 5.9.
Yes.
But unfortunately, the 5.9 does not support solid code
Yeah.
application control.
Yeah.
And McAfee has been saying that they probably will release a patch for that in end of June or July.
Yeah.
I was wondering,
Yeah, that's my understanding. And we also have EPO for the cloud, right? So part of what's happening is we're starting to condense the number of EPO instances and types that we've got out there. So I think you'll see support for app control probably by the end of July. That's the latest internal thing that I'd seen. What version are you currently using?
5.3.2.
5.3.2? Okay.
Because we tried 5.9 and we realized, we discovered that it does not support solid code.
Yeah.
And that was one of the critical tools that we wanted to use.
Sure. We might want to talk offline, and I can probably get you a little bit more clarity in terms of answers. Okay. Any other questions? Great. We stand between you, and I'm sure there are several happy hours right around the corner. So, thank you very much for coming. We appreciate your time.